Hello, good evening, everyone. Welcome to our special chapter meeting of the Philadelphia and Southeastern Pennsylvania chapter, the Climate Reality Project. It's wonderful to see you all tonight. We know that the Climate Reality Project and many other organizations are working to demand environmental justice throughout Pennsylvania and across our nation and world. We're coming together tonight to learn more about what our Pennsylvania State Department of Environmental Protection is doing to ensure environmental justice throughout our state. We are honored to have a special guest speaker tonight, Amani Reed, who will share a presentation on environmental justice, an overview, and environmental justice policy implementation. Amani will also update us on the revised EJ policies and upcoming public comment meetings in the Southeast. Our guest speaker's presentation will take about 30 minutes. Excuse me. And then we'll host a Q&A session at the end for about 15 to 20 minutes. During the presentation, please feel free to submit your questions in the chat. Please also note that our guest's presentation and Q&A session will be recorded. We will then host a shortened chapter monthly meeting with the remaining time and adjourn at 8:30. So let's get started. It is my honor and pleasure to introduce our guest speaker, Amani Reed. Amani is currently serving as the Eastern Region Coordinator for Pennsylvania's Department of Environmental Protection's Office of Environmental Justice. Amani has a BA in Political Science with an Environmental Studies minor from Temple University and is a former U.S. Army reservist. Amani is a saxophonist, clarinetist, and traveler. Her past work includes climate justice organizer with Power Interfaith, policy engagement manager for Pennsylvania Interfaith Power and Light, and legislative aide for State Representative Donna Bullock. We're proud to also have Amani as a member of our chapter. So we welcome Amani. Thank you so much for joining our chapter meeting this evening. And now I'll turn it over to you.
Thanks so much, Abba. Really appreciate it, and good evening, everyone. Hope you all are doing well. Once again, my name is Amani Reed. I'm with the DEP's Office of Environmental Justice. And Abba, I just wanted to give a special shout out to Reimagine Appalachia. I also intern with them, and I am just realizing as you're saying my bio that I forgot to include them. So I just wanted to say I did some work with them as well, if anyone's familiar, but very happy to be here. Thank you all for your time. I'm here to talk to you more about the Office of Environmental Justice, and more specifically, as of September 16th, we have adopted an interim final environmental justice policy. And we also have an updated mapping tool called Penn EnviroScreen, and we had some amazing graduate students from Temple University help us there. I actually, side note, did this presentation a few hours ago, and I actually took about 45 minutes. So with that in mind, I am going to get right into it because I want to make sure that there is time for questions and answers and things. Give me 1 second, and just some background on the Office of Environmental Justice as I'm getting things loaded up. We were established as a point of contact for Pennsylvania residents, specifically low-income area residents and residents with communities with high number of minorities. Right now, I am serving as Eastern Regional Coordinator, and I am in collectively with my coworker Juan Surratt. I'm actively covering the Southeastern and Northeastern region. Our primary goal is to increase the community's awareness on the environmental justice, feedback and kind of like work and ways that we work with environmental justice communities. We want to make sure that the community understands that also the permitting process that the Department of Environmental Protection uses with a wealth of geologists, inspectors, and other staff members. We want to make it more understandable for the community, and also giving them a voice when it comes to these projects that are coming into communities. So we're actively doing that. And some updates from our office include a growing staff. So Prior to this year, I believe there was only maybe 3 or 4 staff members in the Office of Environmental Justice and only 1 regional coordinator. Now there's 1 regional coordinator in each region, with the exception of South Central, which is currently vacant, but will be filled soon. We have central office staff, which a lot of our leadership are present there. And we're including, very, very importantly, we're including environmental justice as a core pillar in DEP's mission as a whole. So this is throughout the entire department. There's environmental justice is being kind of emphasized, prioritized, and there's an environmental justice plan that the Secretary Richard Negrin, has put out across the entire department. He also put out a new vision. He created a Office of Environmental Excellence, which Salim Chapman, if anyone's familiar with him, from the Office of Sustainability, he's now leading that office. One of the visions includes climate leadership, which we know is very important, especially in this region, as well as environmental justice is one of the visions. And us as an office, we're trying to really push that and help, our local staff members to understand that as well. The updated environmental justice policy and MAPR and executive order I will get into. The DEP's mission is to protect Pennsylvania's air, land, and water from pollution and to provide for the health and safety of its citizens through a cleaner environment. And we work as partners with individuals, organizations, governments, and businesses to prevent pollution and restore natural resources. And sorry, I meant to drop, oh, it already did. Okay, perfect. Thought I didn't drop it. But that link that I just dropped in the chat, you'll be able to see at the top of the screen and click our policy mapping tool, which I will get into in this presentation. And there's also information on public comment meetings, which we are hosting so that residents and organizers like yourself can give input on the policy and MAPR. We are looking to continuously yearly make updates on the MAPR. So with the input from these public meetings and a public comment period, which officially started September 16th and is running until October 29th, we're going to use that input to make sure that we keep revising the policy and MAPR and making it appropriate and making sure that community's input is put in there as well. But I'm going to get more into that. I just wanted to let you know that is what you'll see in the link, but more detailed and thorough. It froze up on me. Okay, here we go. And you'll see at the middle is Pennsylvania Department of Environmental Protection's definition of environmental justice. To the left is the US EPA's definition, and we have it here because we, a lot of our framework and things we do, we're either abiding by the EPA or federal agency, especially when it comes to some permits and regulations with things related to like air quality, for example. Those regulations are directly from the EPA, which us as a department statewide make sure is enforced across the state as kind of needed and specified in those regulations. And then on the right side, you will see the definition from the First People of Color, Environmental Leadership Summit, where they stated out the 17 principles of environmental justice. So just moving on up, like the framework and definitions may be different in different areas, but all with the same core goal, which I like to say is explained very beautifully in this picture, which I'm sure people have seen before. Equality, equity, and justice, as you can visually see, look different. And we are centering and prioritizing justice. And I'm going to go back. If you look on the bottom, you see distributive justice, procedural, corrective, social, and structural, which we are using and looking at when we are kind of looking and working within environmental justice within the department. Understanding that all communities in all areas across the state look different. Issues and things going on within communities, for example, are different. Things in Philadelphia might not look the same for Scranton, Pennsylvania, for example. And with this in mind, we want to make sure that we are getting the resources and information needed in each area as kind of equipped to make sure that that area is getting what they need. So just to get some more into the roots of environmental justice, Chester, Pennsylvania, and specifically Chester Residents Concern for Quality Living, or CERCLE, was a huge part of the Office of Environmental Justice even being created. They actually filed a lawsuit against DEP in 1996. If you've ever been to Chester, Pennsylvania, there is a large and wide group of facilities out there with many different types of emittents and oils and gases. There's been a lot of community concern over the years that continues to be the case now. And honestly, we're working very closely with Chester Residents Concern for Quality Living to address these things. We're actually going to have a public comment meeting specifically in Chester, Pennsylvania on Saturday, October 21st. We'll also be having one in Drexel at Drexel University, on Thursday, October 26th. So just wanted to keep that in mind. But with that lawsuit and the organizing that happened, the DEP Environmental Justice Work Group was created in 1994. Then in 2018, actually the Office of Environmental Justice came. And just some things along with that, to include our 2021 EJ Executive Order, introduced by State Rep Donna Bullock back in 2021, permanently established our office, formally established the Environmental Justice Advisory Board, which is an internal working group that specifically works on statewide issues directly with our Secretary, Secretary Richard McGriff. We also have an Environmental Justice Interagency, Interagency Council, and that's across the state, individuals come from all different agencies, and they're working more externally with the department. And the executive order outlines activities that execute branch agencies should take into further environmental justice goals. Now I'm going to jump more. Let's see, I'm just going to grab some water. I'm just going to provide more context on this environmental justice public participation policy specifically. The policy was created in 2004, and it outlines a process for enhanced public participation for some permits during the permit review process. The policy is exercised for certain permits in certain areas. These certain permits are trigger permits, and these permits are applications with significant public concern due to potential impacts on human health as well as the environment. Opt-in permits are projects that community members, organizations can present to the DEP, and with that concern, we're able to opt in that project. So it's not necessarily triggered by our environmental justice policy and mapper, which you'll see on the right-hand screen, but it might be adjacent to an environmental justice policy or a project. And with those type of reasons and with community concern, we can opt in that permit, that project, and do enhanced public participation, which I'll talk more about in the next few slides. Our first original mapper, which you'll see, only had two indicators to determine environmental justice areas, and that was race and the poverty line. As we know, a lot more needs to be put into consideration when it comes to environmental justice areas. So in 2018, there was a public comment period around the policy revision, and we were in the process in 2018 of updating the policy. It didn't seem to go far enough, and residents wanted more. So we included a more public-facing update process, starting with public gathering meetings. We had a comment period, and we did a very formal outreach, which you'll see here. So we have things like a press release, a share kit, virtual public meetings, 20 presentations, and there's webinars that you can still find on our website. Here we are now, 2023, and this is our current environmental justice policy. Once again, if you look on that link that I put, you can find the entire policy available for download. And these are the components of the environmental justice policy. There's 8 key components of the document, but as you can see, there's more sections. Specifically, the key ones are the general information, definitions, which includes a description of the office, permit review process, community input, which I'll get more into, oil and gas engagement, inspections, compliance, and enforcement, community development and investment, and then which are things like grants and brownfield development, climate initiatives, like our climate action plan, which we worked on with the Department of Energy, and then policy updates. I don't have time, I'll just go back real quick. I don't have time to go through each section tonight. However, I'm gonna drop my information in the chat if it's not already available to you guys. If you have any questions following this presentation or wanna set up a one-on-one, or if you go through the policy and mapper and just have any suggestions, questions on how to submit a comment, please let me know and I can help you with that. But just wanted to highlight a few sections, specifically section 3, environmental justice criteria. This is where the policy applies. In the policy of final appendix for detailed mapping, there's also a technical review document of where the policy will apply to allow for easy updating. Pen and Scribe EnviroScreen, once again, is our new tool for researching areas. This is an internal, meaning we use this when we have permits come in, or should I say applications coming in for permits. We are gonna look at where that facility is trying to renew, revise, or build, and we are gonna see through our Pen EnviroScreen mapper if this area is an environmental justice area. However, like I said in the previous slides, if there is a project that you have concern about that isn't necessarily shown as an EJ area on our map, you can still put in an opt-in request, which I'll talk about as well. If you feel it's a concern for your community, you can opt that project in, and we can take that and actually do some enhanced public participation as well. So just wanted to mention that. This here, I know is a lot of words, but I'm gonna go through it and break it down for you guys. But this is our enhanced public participation process. This is what we as coordinators are trained and here to do as far as public participation engagement. I'm gonna close you guys so I can see the screen. Okay, so we're gonna start with A on the top left. So project is it, and you'll see details. This section details the enhanced public participation process. And the first A is projects covered. So to which projects it can be applied in the permitting context. So this is basically what I was saying earlier, where we're gonna go into our Pen EnviroScreen mapping tool to determine if this is environmental justice area. And there's many different indicators, actually over 30 indicators that we're looking at: environmental, economic, socioeconomic factors, which I'll get into later, which help us to come up with a score. Over 80, we're determining as high priority environmental justice areas. Things below 80 score, we can still opt in. And we can also see, what issues or what the population, what the community looks like in that area. And we're able to see those things on the mapper. So, and I'll get into that in a few more slides. B is once we've determined these trigger or opt-in projects, we're going into a more of an enhanced process as far as community engagement. So there's pre-project community outreach, which is when those applications first come to the Department of Environmental Protection, we are informing the community of the project and getting that input to also use as far as the outreach that we do moving forward. Language access is very important as well. We look at, what what the community looks like. That's very important. And if there are some language barriers, we're going to make sure that we can, find those solutions or make sure that the community out there has information that is readable and understandable. The permit application, once we're in that stage, with things where those conversations are being had with DEP staff and the facility, we are planning outreach around that through our public participation strategy. There's a pre-application meeting that goes on between facilities and the Office of Environmental Justice. If it is an environmental justice area, we are going to be in those conversations, getting input, especially learning more about the community that is around that facility. With enhanced public participation, we are going to hold a public meeting and/or hearing. And public hearings, the difference being that you're given formal testimony on the project. It's going to go into public record. There's going to be a stenographer present who's going to record testimonies, and there will be a transcript per se that will be public record as well. Public meetings, you'll hear from more of an explanation of the project. You'll have a time for question and answer. It's more informal. However, that information is recorded as well. It's just not necessarily provided as a testimony. In all these situations, there's always a public comment period. So individuals at any point can email the department and submit a question. Going. So, and my apologies, I have like the top of my screen cut off. So I'm like, what does that say? But enhanced public participation checklist, that is what the myself and our regional coordinators are using to set the right level of public engagement that fits the project. There's many different components of the checklist, which goes into more detailed information about the project, where it's located, the municipality. Our outreach plan goes there as well, and what we're doing as far as outreach. We always put information on our website on the project. There's a right to know law where if you want or request any information, you can put in a request to the department. And just so everyone understands the abbreviations on the screen, that is team of the individuals that are going to help put this checklist together. Is it, of course, us, the Office of Environmental Justice, or OEJ. RCM is our regional communication managers, which they handle all of our communications, like social media, press related issues, and they do assist with all of the outreach materials as well and help create them and revise them. And then the LGL is a local government liaison, and that is specifically a staff member at the DEP that their role is to contact legislative officials, send information to officials, city commissioners, council members, bureau officials. They are in charge to do that specific outreach. And we work with them to make sure that those districts, areas, and even adjacent ones get the same information as the community. Okay, opt-in request form, I believe that says. As stated, you can, which you'll find on the link as well, or on the website, I should say. This allows the public to identify project concerns around a project and give a heads up on projects with community concern to the Office of Environmental Justice. Just a bit more about the climate initiatives section. We work with and help assist with the Department of Energy's climate action plans and adaptations. There's some more things coming in that capacity, which you can find on the website as well. But this is all about integrating environmental justice considerations in climate investments and directing across the board to engage in public involvement that integrates those needs. And policy updates section talks more about those updates that I mentioned. We're requiring review of the policy every 5 years. However, we're going to be, it will be much more frequent. And we are hopefully planning to take these public comments that we receive this year to have something revised for 2024. Also, our mapper, that Pan and Viral Screen tool now will be updated every 2 years based on latest data. I can tell you in the last few weeks, we have had some input on our mapper. So once again, like I'll drop my information in the chat if we're not able to get to it today, or if you use the mapper in any capacities and have questions or suggestions, we'd love to know so that we can use that feedback to better improve the map in the future. Now I'm gonna quickly get into the mapping tool. This on the screen on your right is actually our old mapper. Once again, we heard from community members that more was needed, more indicators, more demographic indicators and factors need to be included in the mapper, which has led us to this Pan and Viral Screen mapper. And once again, this is something to be used not only internally in DP, but also externally. And this is just some background on what we looked at and considered when creating our current mapping tool, which a lot comes, we look a lot at what the EPA is doing, our federal agency. Like I said, a lot of regulations are directly from the EPA, and we are just, as a state agency, trying to make sure that facilities are abiding by the EPA's standards. And we looked at a review of other states and how they define environmental justice areas. We came up with our framework as being the risk or environmental risk as a calculation, which is pollution burden or threat times the population characteristics, vulnerability. We saw the types of indicators used by other states were things like environmental and population, which led us to what you see here, which is how we're determining our final score on our Pan and Viral Screen mapper, pollution burdens and population characteristics. I'm gonna show it to you guys more broken down, but we're looking at one, pollution burdens, which is things like environmental exposures and effects, and then population characteristics. So what does those populations look like? Is it a sensitive group? Are there, people over 65? Are there a lot of children? Is the asthma rates high? So those kind of things, and socioeconomic populations. And these help determine our score. We have a technical document, and we also have a methodology, which further breaks down these calculations. I was pretty good with math in school, but I'm, definitely don't feel the same confidence now to explain it to you guys more detailed, but we do have a methodology document that breaks it down very, very good. So this right here, broken more down, you'll see right here. So if you look at the top blue tables, those are those indicators, environmental effects and exposures. You'll see these are what emissions and specific exposures we are looking at in the mapper. Then the second column, environmental effects. So even things like proximity to railroads, hazardous sites and storage sites, proximities there, impaired lakes and streams, abandoned mining concerns, that's looked at there. Population characteristics, so some of the things I said, like asthma. If there's accessibility issues as far as things like insurance, the rate of cancer, disability, and heart disease as well. And then socioeconomic populations. So linguistic isolations, which I talked about a bit, educational attainments, those age ranges and differences, and race, of course, and even unemployment and poverty, we look at in our calculation. Now, on the next slide, right here, you're going to see the Penn and Viral Screen Mapping tool. And the light blue, or sorry, the dark blue that you see are areas with a higher score, that 80 and up. And those are our environmental justice areas that you'll see in the darkest blue. And the more and more you lighten out the calculation and final score, those are lower. So the lighter and lighter it gets, the lower the score is. And that's in this specific view of the map, which is the first one you see, but there's actually other like ways that you can see the map. For example, street view, topographical view. We can see it in a buffer capacity. That's one of the themes as well. And then you'll be able to see those EJ areas in red. And if you look on the top left of the screen, you'll see identify results, which is all of those factors, economic, socioeconomic factors will be broken down there. The layers and the legend are also on the right side of the screen, but that'll help you to have a more specific visualization of the mapper and what you want to see. You can also print and download the data. Oh, sorry. The magnifying glass on the left side is the search bar. We also have a refresh, the home screen is the refresh tool. And you can clear your specific map with the erase. And you can zoom and out minimize on the top ones, just to give you some idea of like, but when you click on these, they'll tell you what everything is. And I'm actually gonna, sorry, I'm trying to be cognizant of time, but if there's time, I just wanna actually go on the map because I think it's like kind of easier. But also want to show you guys some of our staff. Regional coordinators aren't on here, but this is our like leadership right here. I'm also going to drop my information in the chat because it's probably easier to contact me. But oh, you know what? I'm so sorry. I knew I already had it up, but I was like, wait, give me 1 second. I'm going to refresh. So this is the first thing you see when you, and this mapping tool is on that link that I put in the chat. It should be at the top. So you can access this as well. So this is what it looks like when you first go in. It's just a little slow on my end, my apologies. So the map is still loading. But these are those tools that I mentioned here, the eraser. I'm trying to figure out what the, yeah, that's the clear the map. So yeah, I was right. Here is our base maps. So those are those different visual representations of the map. There's a lot of different ones. Topographic and street view could be helpful. Then if you want to actually look at it in a buffer theme, you can click this bottom one. I'm gonna just zoom in and I'm actually gonna see. I'm gonna do a Philadelphia address as an example. Just gonna use my address just to give it an example. You can actually, the two ways to look up addresses, you can do the like address with the name, city, You can do longitude and latitude and search it here as well, and it'll give you a search, and those are 2 ways you can look up addresses. When you click the address, it's going to take you right to where it's at. And I'm in the regular map view, so I'm gonna zoom out. You can see the street names. I'm gonna change. Sorry, my Wi-Fi is kind of wacky. So as you can see, that the results popped up on the left side of the screen. And also if you just click the area, it will also give results on the left side. And you can get that longitude, latitude, municipality information. I'm gonna scroll down. The track info is where you can get that score, final score. And if it's an EJ area, it'll say yes or no here. If you look farther down, you'll see those other factors to determine the final score here. So pollution burden, and it's broken down. You'll see specific scores, and the methodology and technical document do further detail where these numbers come from, just for reference. And you'll see all of the exposures from the other slide broken down. Sensitive populations, very high in this area, and asthma. So if any projects, for example, were to be presented in that area, if they put an application in with the Department of Environmental Protection, we're gonna go through all that information, that enhanced public participation that you saw. And there will be public outreach done, a public meeting or hearing, there'll be a public comment period. All the information will go directly to the applicant, will go directly to the Department of Environmental Protection to take into account what is attempting to be put there or renewed. It's really case by case. But we use this mapping tool for every single project. And moving forward, we will use it for every single project. Yeah, I'm going to stop there because I've went over, and I apologize about that. Stop sharing my screen.
Oh, no, that was totally fine, Amani. Thank you so much. That was a very informative presentation. And I think we have a couple of questions in the chat, more than a couple. So we can start the Q&A session then. Deborah, I could read the questions. Deborah is asking, do you cover drilling, waste, storage, and incineration?
Yes, we do. There's a waste department, and they really break down more specifically on like what types of waste. There is specific inspectors and staff that handle the drilling. It's really case by case on the project or permit, but yes.
Okay. All right. And Cindy's asking, is Pennsylvania's EJ process similar to what happens in many other states? You happen to know how it compares?
I mean, when it comes to our process, we did look at what other states did. We looked at what the EPA did. So in a sense, yes, there is similarities, but I think ours is really for the state of Pennsylvania. And I think the input that was received from our actual like state residents and community is what makes ours differ in a sense. And even like things like the EJ definition and like the EPA's mapper, for example, which is used more broadly versus the DEPs, where we have specific grants, we have specific resources that we offer. So Yes, I think there's ways it could be similar, but in a sense, ours is unique for the state of Pennsylvania and for the department.
Okay.
I hope that answers your question.
And what is Bob is asking, what is the difference between trigger and opt-in projects?
Yeah, so I'm going to, I guess, let me not share my screen again. But the main difference is that the trigger permits, they are actually from our mapper tool. Like they're determined from our Penn EnviroScreen mapper. So when you saw like the identifying results and it said EJ area yes, that is what's triggered our enhanced public participation. And I know that I probably made that sound confusing, but opt-in projects aren't deemed as environmental justice areas necessarily on our mapper. However, if we hear community concern on the project, especially a wide variety, and even more recently, we had a community that was adjacent to a community with environmental justice concerns, and they were actually a trigger area. They opted in, if that makes sense. And there was enough community concern to opt in that project. And we based that also off of our policy when doing that, which in the policy, I believe it says, it's not word for word for me, but with community concern, we can opt in that project. And if we receive that concern, if it's directed to us, which a lot of times we have complaints coming in or just comments, and you know, we're like able to be contacted in that capacity. People are able to ask questions. So a lot of times we're just getting, they might not even know if it's a environmental justice area also. So we could determine that with them. And, if they're saying, the concerns they have, even if it doesn't show environmental justice area, we can opt that project in.
Mhm. Okay. And Anne is noting that it's interesting that some rural areas in northern Pennsylvania were high in EJ areas. And she's wondering if that's related to fracking.
It could be. It could. There's a high amount of warehouses in northeastern PA as well, which is a big issue. Even pipelines. So I think it really is on a like case by case, like community by community. So it depends on the area, but it could be like there's those I think we've seen as more higher concern or like more frequent in the Northeast versus I think, a lot of trash, waste, oil, gas, incineration we see on the Southeastern side
Mhm.
more frequent.
Okay. And Sean is asking, what does it mean to be classified as an EJ area? And how is IRA funding impacted? That's a good question. And
The IRA component, I'll have to get back to you, and I'm gonna drop my email in the chat. The first part of your question, we determine environmental justice areas, and I'm gonna share my screen again. Sorry, I keep going back and forth because I'm like, where's the slide?
oh no, that's totally fine.
Oh, okay, yeah, it's definitely farther down. Sorry. This specifically, this score, and like I said, there's a methodology and technical document that really goes into detail on the score. But these characteristics we calculate together to determine the final score. And a score of 80 or above, we're deeming as environmental justice areas. And we look at these different indicator categories in our final score. Toxic air emissions, water emissions, that's broken down more in the policy. But this is what we use to determine environmental justice areas. And that enhanced public participation would go along with that determination. I'm just going to leave it up.
Okay. And I have a question on how are the indicators selected? So what are some of the criteria that go into selection of the indicators or the process that's involved?
A lot of the process came from community input in those 2018, like the public comment period we're doing right now was done prior in 2018. And at that time, we didn't have this current mapper with over 30 indicators. We only had drawing a blank on the old mapper name, but we had a mapper that only looked at EJ areas as race, and if you were below the poverty line at a certain percentage. So with that limited information on the mapper and that 2018 public comment period, these were like these, not suggestions, but these were like the high priority categories and indicators that the community kind of let us know. And with that information, some of our experts here at DEP, the community, and then those graduate students that helped us build the mapper. And of course, the Office of Environmental Justice, our secretary, all kind of put the input in to come with these categories. However, I will say this is going to change. And there's no doubt that more will be added. And that's why we're putting this public comment period together so that we can know, for example, is Julia on the call? I'm not sure if she is.
Yes, she is.
Oh, okay. Yeah, so she okay, hi Julia. Sorry, I can't see you because I just want to leave this up. But yeah, Julia mentioned PFAS and that not being shown as an indicator in the category. And that's something that not only have we brought to the team, but it's now being taken into consideration. Of course, I'm highly suggesting that you come to a meeting or put a comment in so that we can have that like in like a legal aspect. But yeah, like we're taking that and looking at 2024 having more environmental exposures to include something like PFAS. So. Oh, Abba, you're muted.
So Paul's asking for people in high industrial pollution areas, can EJ assist those people with medical issues, coverages, drinking water replacements, assisting with moving to safer areas?
Not necessarily. I think that I think especially something like those things, like we might need to bring in other departments, like the Department of Health, for example, the EPA. We don't necessarily have the ability to relocate and move people in that capacity. Like we have grants and resources, but I think in that type of situation, I would recommend also reaching out to your state representative or your municipal, like your county representatives, because there's definitely resources in the state that can assist you with specifically that. I hope that makes sense. But if for something specifically like that, and I used to work for State Rep down at Bullock, I would highly suggest you reach out to your local representative. Also, um, I would file a complaint as well, like a formal environmental complaint to the DEP you can do. And depending on where it is, like I'm sure that maybe a specific program within the department, like air waste order, I'm not sure specifically, but they might be able to see what regulations and things are there. But I think it's really a case by case. So I'm not necessarily sure, but I would highly say reaching out to your representatives about that.
Okay, and Sean, I think that was the same question as before. I'm not sure. But Bob is asking, is saying that he's noticed that in dealing with trash, people feel very strongly on both sides. If it's incineration versus landfill, if that's the solution, either one of those solutions in quotes. And can you comment on that?
I'm trying to. I'm sorry. Can you repeat it? I'm just trying to figure out how to best.
So Bob is saying that that when individuals talk about how to deal with trash, they feel strongly on both sides about what to do with the trash, meaning whether it should be incinerated or whether it should go into a landfill.
Well, the DEP works in both capacities, incinerating and landfills, and that with those type of facilities, I mean, there's a vast amount of requirements and regulations and things that have to be met. I'm not really sure how to best like give my input there. But I always say the DEP works with both, and I don't think I don't have the discrepancy to say like which is better. But I know that DEP works with both those types of facilities, and from what I've seen, there's a high level of standard that those facilities have to meet to operate.
Mm-hmm.
I hope I'm not sure if that is the best response, but yeah. And if there's something specific, I think the best thing I could say is like to send me an email. I can get some, like if I need to talk to a staff member at the DEP, I could do so and like get more information, but I'm just not sure. I'm sorry.
Okay. All right. Are there any other questions?
And I'll stop sharing.
Anyone else, feel free to raise your hand or enter it in the chat. Okay.
Yeah, I'll just say, sorry.
Oh, go ahead.
Yeah, if there's any, I know I gave a lot of information. If there's any like questions or things that come up, if you want to have like a individual conversation, I've been with the DEP since April. There's been people that have been here much longer than me. And if needed, we can have those appropriate individuals a part of the conversation, or I can get, answers, more information. I just would say now, especially before these public comment meetings come, especially in Drexel area and Chester, like take a look at the link that I dropped. I'll drop it again because I just realized dropped it like at the beginning of the call. But take a look at the link, take a look at the policy. If there's really anything you think it's like imperative or just suggestions, yeah, please let me know. There's a formal way to submit comments in the link. But I thank you guys so much for your time. I really appreciate it.
Thank you, Amani. Thank you so much. It's really been an informative presentation. I think all of us have learned a great deal, and especially with the mapping tool. Definitely that's something we'll all be checking out. So this has
Thanks.
been really a great, wonderful evening. And thank you again for sharing all of your insights and helping us to understand DEP's work on environmental justice and how all of us, how our communities can engage with your office. And so I'd like to thank everyone else for their contributions and discussions to our discussions this evening. So for our next steps, we'll follow up after the meeting by sending registrants and everyone here the link to the recording and additional resources that we shared tonight. So thank you, everyone. Thank you so much for attending, and please stay for our chapter monthly meeting, which will end at 8:30.